Raw, haunting, and filled with emotion, Saving Private Ryan, 1998, is not just a war film, but a cinematic masterpiece that engraves itself into the soul of every viewer. Behind the frames that reveal the brutal devastation of the battlefield lies a painstaking production filled with astonishing stories that few could believe. From Tom Sizemore being required to take daily drug tests, to the D-Day sequence that left veterans shaken, to Steven Spielberg's daring decisions that nearly placed the entire cast in mortal danger, Saving Private Ryan stands as undeniable proof of Spielberg's devotion and brilliance together with his team. Get ready to uncover 20 unbelievable truths about this legendary film, revelations you may have never known before. 1. Tom Sizemore and the daily drug test. Throughout the entire filming, Tom Sizemore was required to undergo a drug test every single day. No exceptions allowed. Before stepping onto the set of Saving Private Ryan, Sizemore had been a gifted actor whose career was teetering on the edge of collapse. His severe drug problems and a string of scandals had made Hollywood producers lose all trust in him. Steven Spielberg, however, still saw a spark of potential in Sizemore, but he refused to take unnecessary risks. The condition was set in stone: daily drug testing without fail. Each morning, before throwing himself into the chaos of war scenes, Sizemore had to face another battle just as tense: the test. A medical staff member was always present to ensure he did not fall back into old habits. Spielberg even prepared a contingency plan. If Sizemore failed even once, he would be dismissed on the spot, and every scene would be reshot with another actor, no matter how much it cost. What seemed like a sentence became his salvation. Sizemore kept his discipline intact, delivering a powerful performance as Horvath, a hardened veteran, seasoned by war yet still deeply humane. Later, Sizemore admitted that Saving Private Ryan not only saved his career, but also saved his life. 2. The actors had no idea when explosions would happen. Imagine yourself sprinting across a sand-covered beach, bullets tearing through the air, and suddenly, boom! An explosion erupts right beside you, sand and fake blood spraying everywhere. That was exactly the reality on the set of Saving Private Ryan. What made it even more striking was that the actors were never told when the blasts would occur. Steven Spielberg wanted fear and chaos to surface in the most raw way possible, not as staged performance. Instead of letting the cast prepare, he threw them into unpredictability, like real soldiers in battle. Explosions were triggered at random, with only vague markers on the beach for direction. As they ran, no one knew if their next step would bring safety or send them straight into a sudden detonation. The result was something no script could fake: instinctive reactions. The startled flinches, the wide-eyed shock, the instinct to drop to the ground, buzzards, all of it was genuine. One actor even had fake blood splatter all over him, froze for a few seconds, and then suddenly remembered he still had lines to deliver. These unscripted moments heightened the film's authenticity, allowing audiences to truly feel the chaos and peril of war. 3. The D-Day scene left veterans shaken. It is no coincidence that the first 27 minutes of Saving Private Ryan are regarded as one of the most haunting depictions of war ever filmed. Steven Spielberg did not simply want to reconstruct a battle, he wanted to thrust the audience straight into the nightmare of June 6, 1944, when thousands of American soldiers stormed Omaha Beach under relentless German fire. There was no compromise in this sequence: blood splattering across the screen, bullets ripping through the air, desperate screams echoing, and soldiers falling with each passing second. Spielberg employed handheld cameras to capture the chaos, immersing viewers as though they themselves were trapped in the onslaught. There was no musical score to soften the impact, only crashing waves, rattling gunfire, and the broken breaths of men fighting to survive. For World War II veterans, especially those who had actually fought in Normandy, the scene was nothing less than a time machine dragging them back to a day they had longed to forget. Some quietly wept in their seats. Others walked out, unable to endure the memories resurfacing. One veteran later admitted, "I saw my friends again, and I could not remain in that room any longer." 4. The Normandy Cemetery is real. To conclude Saving Private Ryan, Steven Spielberg did not opt for a fabricated set or a studio reconstruction. He chose to film at the actual American military cemetery in Normandy, the resting place of over 9,000 soldiers who fell in World War II. There, history is tangible. Every grave tells a story. Every marker carries the weight of a sacrifice that never returned. In the final sequence, as the elderly Ryan stands before Captain Miller's grave, the moment goes beyond acting. It becomes sacred. The crew kept everything minimal, moved carefully, and maintained silence on set, as though standing in the presence of those who had given their lives. As the camera followed Ryan's steps, what appeared was not merely a scene, but the embodiment of loss, reverence, and the immeasurable cost of war. Endless rows of white crosses stretched toward the horizon, evoking emotions no dialogue could capture. Spielberg deliberately stripped the moment of any grandeur. No triumphant score, no lengthy speeches, only silence, the wind rustling through flags, and Ryan's gaze heavy with meaning. This was no ordinary scene. It was a reminder etched in film. War does not end when the guns fall silent. It endures in memory, in the graves, and in the lives of those left behind. 5. The true story of Fritz Nieland. The character of Private Ryan, the focal point of the film, was not entirely a product of fiction. He was inspired by a real event in World War II, the story of Fritz Nieland, an American soldier who was pulled out of combat after his 3 brothers were killed. Fritz Nieland came from a family in New York. During the war, the Nieland family received devastating news. 3 sons had died in brutal battles across the Pacific and Europe. Fearing that the last surviving son would also be lost, the US military quickly removed Fritz from the front lines and sent him home. Yet the tragedy was not unique to the Nielands. In World War II, thousands of American families endured the loss of multiple loved ones. But it was Fritz's story that struck screenwriter Robert Rodat, inspiring him to create the character of James Ryan. Fritz Nieland, the real man behind the tale, never knew that his life would later be
saw him on
immortalized
screen.
on the big screen. He survived, returned home, and lived out a peaceful life, something countless other soldiers never had the chance to experience. 6. Steel obstacles on Omaha Beach. The X-shaped blocks scattered across Omaha Beach in the landing scene were not random props. They were precise recreations of the Czech hedgehogs, steel obstacles used by German forces to block Allied tanks and landing craft. Spielberg demanded authenticity. He instructed the design team to study historical photos, original blueprints, and even replicate rust and erosion so that every detail carried the weight of reality. At first, the Germans assumed the Allies would land at high tide, when the obstacles were hidden under the water. But the Allies chose the opposite. They attacked at low tide, exposing the deadly steel maze across the shore. Every metre of sand became a gauntlet of blood and death. Spielberg turned this into a weapon of tension. American soldiers clung to the steel barriers as shells exploded nearby, with blood and sand flying through the air. These obstacles were not just set pieces. They embodied suffocation and despair. They reminded viewers that every inch gained on Omaha was purchased with blood and lives. 7. Matt Damon was hated on set. While the main cast of Saving Private Ryan was thrown into a brutal 10-day boot camp, learning to fire weapons, carry the wounded, and endure cold rain, they also suffered exhaustion, hunger, and pressure like real soldiers. But one actor was spared the ordeal: Matt Damon. Spielberg deliberately kept Damon out, not to favour him, but to create separation. When the cast met Damon for the first time on set, they did not see a comrade. They saw an outsider, someone who had not paid the same price. That difference bred natural resentment, and the unspoken question lingered: why him? That distance carried on to the screen. Damon's character, the soldier for whom so much had been sacrificed, became the embodiment of injustice. Why was his life worth saving over so many others? The hostility toward Damon was no accident. It was Spielberg's masterstroke, transforming real-life tension into cinematic truth. 8. The strange way Vin Diesel was chosen. Before becoming the star of Fast and Furious, Vin Diesel was just an unknown actor. He once worked as a waiter and spent his own money to produce a short film titled Multifacial, telling the struggles of a mixed-race actor trying to find a place in the film industry. That independently released film unexpectedly ended up in Steven Spielberg's hands. Spielberg, always alert to emerging talent, was deeply impressed by the authenticity and emotional depth Diesel brought. Without an audition, without a callback, Spielberg handed him the role of Private Capazzo, a character with only a few appearances but leaving a powerful mark. This role was far from the action-packed image Diesel would later be known for. It was a role filled with emotion, with one of the most memorable moments: Capazzo dying, desperately trying to hand over his last letter to a comrade. That scene not only moved audiences to tears, but also proved that Diesel could deliver more than action. He could embody pain and loss with astonishing realism. 9. Hanks added the line, "Earn this. Earn this." 2 simple words, yet they encapsulated the entire essence of Saving Private Ryan. The astonishing truth: this iconic line was not in the script. It was an improvisation by Tom Hanks. In Captain Miller's final moments, as he lay dying on the battlefield, he pulled Private Ryan close and whispered, "Earn this." It was not just a message, but a last will, a moral burden Ryan would carry for the rest of his life. Spielberg, meticulous with every detail, instantly recognized the power of the line and chose not to reshoot the scene. The line's weight came from its simplicity. No long speech, no philosophical preaching, just a reminder. Ryan survived, but the cost of his survival was the lives of many others. That moment not only shook audiences, but also became etched as one of the most unforgettable lines in cinema history. 10. Gunfire blasting into the actor's ears. Spielberg understood that to make audiences truly feel war, he had to do something unprecedented: pump real gunfire sounds directly into the actor's ears during filming. Each actor wore special earpieces that played the roar of machine guns, the blasts of artillery, and the chilling whiz of bullets cutting through the air. These were not effects added afterward, but live sounds transmitted in real time. It meant that while they acted, they were not only seeing chaos, they were hearing it as if they were there. The psychological toll was immense. Gunshots cracking near their ears startled many actors into genuine shock. What the camera captured, sweat dripping, terrified eyes, ragged breathing, was not performance. It was the body's instinctive response to fear under extreme pressure. 11. John Williams and the Bixby Letter. Legendary composer John Williams crafted the moving score of Saving Private Ryan. But one moment during recording was even more haunting, and it never appeared in the film. During a session at Boston Symphony Hall, Williams wanted the musicians to truly grasp the grief and loss behind the story. He invited Tom Hanks to step on stage and read the Bixby Letter, the famous message President Abraham Lincoln wrote to a mother who had lost 5 sons in the Civil War. As Hanks began reading, the hall fell into absolute silence. Each word, each breath carried a weight that carved sorrow into the air. "I cannot imagine the anguish you must endure at such a loss." Hanks's voice, deep and trembling, froze the entire room. The musicians, instruments in hand, slowly lowered them. None could continue playing. One later recalled, "We did not just hear a letter, we felt the grief of an entire generation." By the time Hanks reached the final line, no one present could hold back their tears. 12. Spielberg refused to take payment. Steven Spielberg is remembered not only as a masterful director, but also as a man of deep humanity. When he agreed to direct Saving Private Ryan, he made a choice that stunned Hollywood. He refused to accept any payment for his work. The reason? Spielberg called it blood money. To him, profiting from a story about the true sacrifices of soldiers who fought and died in World War II was unacceptable. Instead of pocketing the money, he directed all of it to be donated to organisations supporting veterans and their families. He did not do this for publicity. No press conferences, no public statements. Even when the film became a worldwide phenomenon, grossing over $480 million, he stayed silent about his decision. Only later did many in the industry recognise it as proof that Spielberg was not just an extraordinary filmmaker, but also a man who placed morality above profit. 13. Restoring real landing craft. When Spielberg set out to recreate the Normandy landing, he knew that every detail, no matter how small, had to be authentic. That was why he refused to use fabricated props for the landing craft. Instead, he sought out real LCVPs, Higgins boats, that had actually been used in World War II. These vessels had been abandoned for decades, corroded and heavily damaged. Spielberg hired engineers to restore them from the ground up, repairing engines, mechanisms, and even the heavy steel doors so they functioned as they once had. When the actors boarded them, they were not simply entering a film set, but stepping directly into history. The roar of the engines, the grinding sound of the metal doors, and the cramped, suffocating space made the cast feel the same tension real soldiers had endured. When those boats surged toward the beach under German fire, the sequence became more than just a war scene. It became a reminder of sacrifice. These boats were not mere props. They were symbols of men who stepped into hell, not all of whom returned. Spielberg resurrected the past, making the film more vivid and harrowing than ever. 14. Real gunfire sounds recorded. In Saving Private Ryan, sound was the key that pulled audiences straight into the chaos of war. But Spielberg was not satisfied with ordinary effects. He demanded that the crew use actual World War II weapons to record, firing them into 3 different surfaces: sand, water, and metal, to capture the most authentic resonance. Thus, every gunshot you hear in the film is not simulated but real, recorded from rifles like the M1 Garand, machine guns like the MG42, and other weapons once used on the battlefields of Normandy. The sound team even recreated the whiz of bullets by firing at massive metal plates and capturing the echo from multiple angles. What made it extraordinary was that these sounds were not added solely in post-production. Spielberg played them live on set, transmitted through the actors' earpieces. This meant they did not only see the chaos, but heard the danger pressing against them. The blasts erupted right by their ears, water splashing mixed with screaming voices, creating an atmosphere so suffocating it felt real. The gunfire in Saving Private Ryan was more than sound design. It became an invisible character, delivering tension and authenticity that made audiences feel as though they themselves were trapped on the battlefield. 15. No music during the landing scene. Music in film often guides the emotions of the audience, but in the Normandy landing sequence, Spielberg chose the opposite. He removed music entirely. That bold decision created an atmosphere of raw pain and brutal reality. Instead of triumphant scores, what the audience heard was the pounding of waves, the shriek of machine guns, the cries of soldiers, and the gasps for breath. Spielberg wanted viewers to confront war directly, stripped of any romantic filter. In that moment, the audience was thrown onto Omaha Beach itself, part of the landing. With no melody to hold on to, they were forced to face the cruelty head-on. The agonizing screams, the heavy doors of landing craft creaking open, the relentless explosions, together forming a grim symphony of life and death. This choice was not merely artistic, it was a reminder: war is not a heroic anthem. It is chaos without rhythm, where men fight to survive amid fire and blood. 16. Military training before filming. Before stepping onto the set, The cast of Saving Private Ryan underwent a grueling 10-day military boot camp. It was not just a course in holding rifles or moving in formation. Spielberg wanted them to taste the hardship, exhaustion, and resilience of real soldiers. The training was led by Dale Dye, a former US Marine renowned for bringing military authenticity into Hollywood. Under his strict command, the actors were forced to wake at dawn, wear heavy uniforms, eat rations meant for soldiers, and endure punishing physical drills under harsh weather. They learned not only to handle weapons, but also to carry the wounded, maintain formation under pressure, and confront relentless fatigue. Each day they crawled through mud, marched in rain, and endured Dye's constant shouting, understanding that war was not only bullets, but also the breaking down of spirit. One notable exception was Matt Damon. Spielberg intentionally kept him out of the camp. He wanted to create genuine separation. Thus, when the cast met Damon for the first time, they saw an outsider, someone who had not shared their suffering. That natural resentment carried onto the screen, amplifying the authenticity of the tension between Ryan and the men who had sacrificed so much to find him. 17. The film used for PTSD training. After Saving Private Ryan was released, it was recognised not only as a cinematic masterpiece, but also as a valuable tool in understanding post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. The US Department of Defense even employed the film in training sessions for therapists, helping them grasp what veterans had endured. For those who had never been to war, imagining its horror was nearly impossible. But Saving Private Ryan, especially the Normandy landing sequence, delivered an almost real experience. The tearing gunfire, the smothering chaos, the sudden deaths, and the indescribable weight of loss. Young doctors, who had never met World War II veterans or seen the scars of combat, used the film as a key to enter the minds of their patients. They learned to listen and to understand that the pain of war lay not only in physical wounds, but also in memories that would never fade. The film also sparked a wave of World War II veterans to finally seek therapy, some for the very first time, to speak about what they had hidden for decades. For many, Saving Private Ryan became a door, forcing them to face memories long buried and giving them a chance at release. 18. Many veterans spoke for the first time after watching the film when Saving Private Ryan premiered. No one expected that the film would awaken long-buried memories in thousands of World War II veterans. Many of them had remained silent for decades, never speaking to their families, their friends, or even confronting themselves. But after watching the film, something changed. They began to talk. The Normandy landing sequence in particular made many veterans feel as if they were reliving the horror on the battlefield. Some admitted they wept in the theatre, not for present sorrow, but because memories they thought were buried resurfaced with full force. One veteran confessed, "I never told my family what I went through, but after seeing the film, I felt I had to speak." The film created a wave, encouraging veterans, even at 70 or 80 years old, to approach their families or therapists and share their stories for the very first time. And the transformation was felt not only by them. Many families said they came to understand their fathers, grandfathers, or uncles more deeply after hearing what they had once kept locked away. 19. The revenue of a legend. With over $480 million earned worldwide, Saving Private Ryan became one of the most successful war films ever made. Remarkably, in the fiercely competitive year of 1998, it ranked only behind Armageddon in total box office, yet in terms of cultural and artistic influence, it stood above all. But its true success was never about numbers. The film redefined how Hollywood portrayed war. Before it, many war films tended to romanticize the conflict or focus on idealized heroes. Spielberg stripped all of that away, leaving war as it truly was: chaos, suffering, and devoid of real victors. For nearly 2 decades, it held the record as the highest-grossing World War II film until Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk arrived in 2017. Yet the legacy of Saving Private Ryan cannot be measured only in box office records. It lives in the haunting impression it left upon audiences. The film won 5 Academy Awards, including Best Director for Spielberg, and was honoured by the American Film Institute, AFI, as one of the greatest films of all time. But beyond awards, it became part of popular culture. A film that everyone must watch to understand the sacrifice and the unbearable cost of war. 20. Re-release in 2023. 25 years after its premiere, Saving Private Ryan returned to the big screen in 2023. This was not a remake, nor an edited version. Spielberg and the distributors decided to re-release the film as a tribute to World War II veterans and in anticipation of the upcoming 80th anniversary of D-Day in 2024. Millions of people, those who had once watched it in theatres in 1998 and those who had only heard of its reputation, flocked to cinemas across America. Each screening was more than just a cinematic event, it was a moment of remembrance. Veterans, now in their 90s, were invited to attend. Some came with their families, others with nothing but silence. Younger audiences, who had only seen the film on small screens, finally experienced the grandeur and sorrow of Saving Private Ryan in theatres. One viewer shared, "I had heard my father talk about the film, but watching it on the big screen, I felt the pain he carried all his life." Saving Private Ryan is not merely a cinematic masterpiece, but a mirror reflecting sacrifice, duty, and memory. Spielberg did more than tell a war story. He left behind a legacy, a reminder that those who fell never truly left us, and that our task is to live lives worthy of their sacrifice.